Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's session where we'll be talking about increasing employee engagement in frontline workforces. I see that we already have a few people coming into this session. We will wait just a few minutes before we start with the presentation. Meanwhile, please feel free to interact with us in the chat. We are super curious to hear who's in this session and if you have been working with employee engagement in your organizations. So please feel free to share some information in your experience in the chat. I see that we have some people who have been working with engagement and some even using Eletive. That's really exciting to see. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so I see that we are 12 minutes past. So let's start with today's webinar. Welcome everyone to this session. As mentioned before, we will be focusing on increasing employee engagement in frontline workforces today. On the agenda, we have the following points. So we will start with a short introduction of who we are in this session. I will have some questions to Tove about frontline engagement. I will also talk a bit about the technical solutions that Eletive can offer. And at the end, we will summarize with some outcomes and lessons learned. We will also have some time at the end for a short Q&A session from you guys who are listening in. But let me start with a short introduction of myself. So my name is Diana Bond. I am a senior customer success manager here at Eletive, working mainly with our largest enterprise customers. I have extensive experience in supporting organizations with a frontline heavy workforce, helping them strengthening engagement and leadership on all levels. And I have been working in customer-facing roles for over 9 years. With me today, I have the great pleasure of being joined by one of our amazing customers, Tove from Transdev, Sweden. Tove, would you like to introduce yourself?
Of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Tove Griffin. I work with HR programs within talent and training at Transdev in Sweden. I have approximately 20 years experience with the HR space, including workplace culture, engagement, and consultancy across multiple industries. And apart from, I suppose, turning data or insights into action, my main goal in my life or at work is to ensure that everyone can look forward to coming to work. And this is why I value the work that I'm given the opportunity to do.
Thank you so much, Tove. Can you also just say a few words about what you do at Transdev Sweden?
Yeah, the full name of the company is Transdev Sweden. We are a global group. We operate out of 19 countries worldwide with 100,000 staff. In Sweden, we are 7,500 people. We're not always very well known for our brand name because very often we are quite invisible. We operate public transport on behalf of public transport authorities across Sweden, in Stockholm, in Umeå, in Dalarna, Malmö, Gothenburg, etc. So we provide and manage a variety of transportation modes, including buses, trams, trains, ferries. But worldwide, we also have cable cars and shuttles and self-driving vehicles.
Thank you so much, Tove. Before I start with my first question for you, I just wanted to highlight why engagement is so important for organizations. And for you who are listening, if you would like to have captions on, please feel free to click on the CC button that you see here within the platform. But with engagement, when we talk about engagement, it's not just about making people feel good. It's about driving real business outcomes. Engaged teams are more profitable, take fewer sick days, have lower turnover, and are simply more productive. So engagement isn't just an HR metric, it's actually a core business strategy. And that brings me to the first question that I would like to start with. Tove, how have you made engagement a strategic priority at Transdev?
Well, for the exact reasons that you actually showed on the previous slide, I would say. At Transdev here in Sweden, we have a long history of conducting annual surveys. And we, I suppose, saw an opportunity here to integrate engagement more closely with our business strategy. So with Eletive, as I suppose a real difference from other platforms that we've used, we can now place engagement data directly into the dashboards of our managers and show engagement as a KPI alongside other HR metrics, such as absenteeism or sick absences. But crucially, we can also place it alongside other KPIs that our operations are reliant on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. And that way, we make engagement a priority not only for HR, but for managers, for leaders in our business. That I suppose is the ultimate goal in any case.
Can you also describe the unique challenges you've seen in engaging frontline employees at Transdev compared to more traditional office-based workforces?
Yeah. When I came to Transdev 3.5 years ago, it was the first time I worked in the public transport industry in this fashion. And one of the things that really stood out to me is how different a frontline worker's daily work experience actually is. Frontline roles in our business means quite irregular hours in some cases, pressure from customers or travelers using our different modes of transport, very little overlap with your manager, for example. Unlike office workers, our staff don't sit in front of a computer that they can leave and walk away from and have a coffee and a chat. They don't often attend regular team meetings, and they don't, I suppose, have the same flexibility and autonomy in their work that we might in office-based roles. But that also means that our managers face very different challenges and can't rely on like traditional engagement methods. We needed to find a solution that fitted that reality. And I suppose with Eletive, we found a solution where employees, whilst distant and perhaps not having seen their manager for a couple of days or a week, they could still interact with their own engagement data, with their own dashboard, but also provide the manager with a very unique set of support functions, and encourage a growth of self-leadership, in a sense, within the group. So rather than engagement building efforts being very top-down, they're now more bottom-up than before.
And I think what we just heard really highlights the reality for so many frontline organizations. Engagement can't rely on traditional methods or constant manager presence. That's why involving the entire organization becomes so important. When employees have access to their own results and the right tools, engagement becomes something they own and not just something that is done for them. And at the same time, it lightens the load for managers and HR because everyone shares this responsibility for driving the engagement and the change. So, like you said, moving from a more traditional top-down approach to one where everyone is involved really changes the culture. And that also brings me to the next question. Can you tell us what some of the signals or pain points were that made you realize that employee engagement needed to be a strategic priority at Transdev Sweden?
We have in Sweden, at Transdev Sweden, we've been conducting employee surveys since 2014. So in a sense, we are actually a forerunner within our group in that we've measured engagement regularly over time, and also including all staff in our employee surveys, which as it actually isn't the case in some of the countries where we operate. But what became very clear to us is that the annual approach of measuring engagement didn't support the continuous improvement and continuous listening approach that we wanted to take. Especially, I suppose, for our 80% frontline workers. The feedback that we received from our operations, from our teams and our managers was that the feedback came in too late. Managers with the large teams often lacked tools and support to act on their results, or even in first case, understand what to act on. And I suppose we saw a real need to connect the engagement data with other key business metrics, such as safety, as staff retention and operational reliability to fully understand its impact. So this is why we're now working towards making engagement a strategic priority for everyone in the business. And through monthly surveys and quarterly reviews, look to help motor that continuous improvement approach that we use in all other parts of our business. So in this case, we choose Eletive actually for its flexibility. Right now, we're piloting monthly surveys for a year, but then through that, we're hoping to make engagement part of the daily leadership focus, not just a HR exercise or an annual exercise that we do.
And I think what you just said here really highlights one of the biggest challenges that I often hear from organizations. When feedback only comes once or twice a year, it is almost impossible to act in real time. By the time the results are out, the situation has often changed. And for large frontline teams, that delay makes engagement work feel disconnected from that everyday reality. And that is exactly where the shift to real-time pulse surveys makes such a difference. Instead of measuring once a year and acting months later, you get a continuous loop where you measure, analyze, and act. So feedback becomes this living part of daily operation. And it helps organizations like yours to stay agile, spot issues early, and make engagement a natural part of how the business actually runs and not just that annual check-in. But of course, like you mentioned, not every organization is ready to jump straight into a fully continuous approach. And that's, of course, completely fine. What's great about Eletive is that it allows for flexibility. You can start with a yearly or quarterly frequency and then gradually move towards shorter pulse cycles as the organization and, of course, the culture evolves. You can even mix approaches where some teams, like the frontline operations, run more frequent pulses, when others might stay on, for example, a quarterly cadence. And that flexibility also makes it much easier to support managers and supervisors, especially those closest to the frontline, because they can get the right level of insight at the right time. So that also leads me to the next question, Tove. How have you supported the managers and supervisors who are often the closest to the frontline?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we have to always consider when we make decisions in our business, whether they are, operational or whether they are in relation to eventually, I suppose, or technical advances that we want to do, is that about 80% of our staff are frontline workers. Only 20% are actually office-based. So every solution that we seek out has to work for them. That's like the first step for us. We have to consider the fact that a lot of our staff often work on their own. They are driving a bus on the countryside of Sweden, or they're driving a train or a tram somewhere around a city. And our managers managing these people are not many managers, they're quite few. It's not unusual for one of our frontline managers to have between 75 and 100 staff in their direct report relation. And that presents very unique challenges. Face-to-face contact with your staff, knowing everyone, keeping an eye on everyone. And by giving them, I suppose, a very practical tool, I usually say that Eletive is like a compass in your hand. It shows you which direction your team is going. It's a practical tool for real-time feedback. It allows managers to directly communicate with individuals in a safe space. And it also gives the manager a continuous visualization of the engagement levels in the team, as well as the AI support that's in the platform, which is absolutely brilliant, that shortens the decision making, the time it takes for a manager to understand what the issue is, to making a decision to act on it or not. And that helps managers not only stay connected, but also to act quicker. So that together now with a very new, I should say, considering this is our first 4 months that we're pulsing, we're introducing a very structured follow-up routine for all our senior management teams within the different 16 businesses that we operate in the country, so that the engagement conversation becomes a natural part of leadership. And our goal, I suppose, at the end of the day, we want engagement to be on the forefront of everyone's thinking, but that it is also regularly brought up at the management team meetings, where they consider safety, operational excellence, sustainability, or circularity, and what are other topics that they are currently working on.
And I also think that you highlighted one of the other big challenges that we do see in large frontline heavy organizations. So that is to stay connected, even when you as a manager have 75 or even up to 100 employees in your teams. And that is exactly where our comments AI comes in that I wanted to show you. So this feature helps managers listen at scale by turning hundreds or sometimes even thousands of comments into those clear and actionable insights. So instead of spending hours reading through every single comment, managers can instantly see which topics that matters the most and see how the people are feeling and where to focus their attention. So it's all about helping managers stay close to their teams, even when they are physically apart, like you described, Tove, and making those engagement conversations a natural, ongoing part of leadership. So with that in mind, if you could give one piece of advice to other organizations trying to engage frontline employees, what would it be?
For me, since being part of, I suppose, Transdev and done the journey from the annual survey to the continuous pulse or intelligent pulse that we're using right now, it's very evident that autonomy is something that people need in their job or at work. And in public transport, when operating public transport, the frontline staff don't actually have the same level of freedom as office workers would do. They can't choose where or when or how they do their work. The autonomy is very limited in terms of the majority of aspects of their day-to-day work routines. Their schedules, their routes, their tasks, they're all set. And I think this is why it's so important to give people influence in some other way, so that they in fact feel that they can impact on their work environment, the work itself, its culture. And this is, I think, where I'm hoping that Eletive will allow people that sense of being invited to shape the workplace of the future and to also impact on the continuous improvement by being able to feed back information about the workplace, steer the priorities or the agenda of the management team when they take decisions on how to develop their operations. So even, I suppose, though the job itself is highly structured, allowing one way of being able to give input and impact on how the business is developing by contributing ideas or even feedback on pains that they experience in their day-to-day work. And I suppose in extension, then the hope is that when people see that their input leads to change or improvements that benefits them, engagement and pride will grow, and people will be feeling more, I suppose, more highly participative in the how the workplace is developing.
And I think this also really brings us back to why engagement matters so much. There is often this belief that if people just work harder, success will follow, and then the engagement will come as a result. But in the reality, we see that it's actually the other way around. When people do feel engaged, when they are included, trusted, and see that their impact as a voice, then that's when motivation and performance naturally rise. And when the engagement drops, it leads to higher turnover, lower productivity, and also lost potential. So the real opportunity really lies in building those environments where people want to go the extra mile, not because they have to, but because they care and they want to. And with that, let's move into the outcomes and the lessons learned. So what really stands out is how continuous listening helps organizations act when it matters the most. That's what truly builds engagement over time. Clear and open communication is just as important. When people actually see that their feedback leads to action, that trust and motivation also grows. And with the help of AI-powered insights, Eletive makes it easier for managers to understand the results, prioritize, and also take meaningful action. So with that, let's open up for a few questions. Please feel free to use the Q&A button to ask your questions. If you ask them in the chat, we will not see them, so make sure to use the Q&A button. We would really love to hear your thoughts and reflections. I see that we have a question from Frida. How did you get your executive leaders to understand why engagement is so important?
Maybe I'm spoiled, but they didn't need any convincing, to be honest. I find that our entire organization, from headquarters and group to the senior, to the what we call koncernledning, the senior management team here in Sweden, it's ingrained. People understand that engagement is an important measure because of the connection it has to profitability. I think what we are struggling with a little bit, though, is to embed a new sense of a new behavior of checking the engagement levels regularly. And this is something that I'm working on, and I'm having to push a little bit, reminding them to look at engagement and how that develops over time. But I don't think that there was any doubt within Transdev as a group or as a business in Sweden that we needed to measure engagement. In fact, it's also a requirement from the public transport authorities that we work with in Sweden, like Trafikförvaltningen or SL here in Stockholm, or Västtrafik in Gothenburg. This is something that is on the agenda for not only the employer, but for the PTAs as well. So
I see that we also, oh, sorry, Tove.
No, sorry, that's all.
Yeah, I saw that we also had a question from Blanda. Doesn't people get tired of pulse meetings?
So I'm not sure what you mean by pulse meetings. And I think this is where, again, I suppose the new behavior that we're trying to create does take time to develop. I must be absolutely honest here. We don't have pulse meetings monthly. We have pulse surveys going out monthly with a limited number of questions at each time. I think the regularity is something that we have to work with, reminding people to participate on a regular basis. But what we have coined is a method of work that I suppose we express as pulsing monthly, following up quarterly, to set very clear expectations within the people, within the staff group, what to expect from this exercise. And whilst we only have pulsed now 3 or 4 times in different parts of the business and are now following up for the first time, I do believe it's going to take us approximately a year or so before we know if that actually is successful. But yes, we are getting a lot of questions. Why are we pulsing again? And what I have done is I've recorded a couple of podcasts that are all 1 minute long that our bus drivers or train drivers can listen to on their way to their shift, so that they understand why we're working this way. But yeah, our response rates aren't super high just yet. We're at about 30% response rate in the frontline worker group, and approximately, I would say, 60 to 75% in the office-based worker group. So I think that in itself will be a journey for us to continue to chant this new way of work, so that people understand, why do I need to respond every month to these questions?
Mm-hmm. I think it's also really important, just like you stated, to highlight that it is a journey. It's not a magical solution to send out pulse surveys and then you will have a super high participation rate and engagement will come straight away. It is a journey, and you have to keep working with discussing the results and showing the organization that the feedback that the employees give actually leads to action. When we look at what the scientific research says, we minimize the risk of having survey fatigue when you send out shorter surveys and keeping the questions relevant. So that's also super important when you're working with pulse surveys. And then we also say that it's recommended to follow up on this feedback and creating action plans on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be every week, even if you do weekly pulse surveys. But finding that frequency of how often you follow up on the results is really important. And of course, communicating the outcome to the organization as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that we also have a question on the screen. What are the participation rates in the pulses, and how do you handle it in structured follow-ups when managers don't receive results because there is too few employees that participated?
Yeah, so the participation rates, as I said, are very varied, because it really depends on sometimes the local leadership and investment in the exercise, and other things. And I think in itself, the participation rates and increasing them will be a journey in itself. And we do that by sharing participation rates. To be honest, it's that competitive nature of us as humans. By posting participation rates business by business, we've created an interest in this. But I think one important factor here is also working with the individual and their curiosity to see their own result and the company result. I think being able to show the company total as a benchmark beside the I result that I receive as an individual, increases the transparency, a level of transparency we've never had before. It was very rare that we shared detailed results to that extent to individuals. So I think, or I'm hoping that by I don't know, using the curiosity, of the individual to not only follow their own journey, but also compare it to their organization, and showing that level of transparency, we will engage more people with the platform, or with the exercise, I suppose. And I do that by storytelling and sharing, and that in itself is only a journey so far. But when managers become more regular in showing the results, they are showing their teams that they are taking this seriously, they are following up, and they are highlighting the issues that needs improvement. And the feedback that I'm getting from the support functions here in our service office in Stockholm is that a majority of managers do bring up the pulse survey in their monthly team meeting. They look at the results, how engagement has trended over time. And now I suppose we're at the step of the journey where we can look back and see, how has engagement changed? Has any drastic things happened in the last couple of weeks or months that has impacted on people's feelings at work, and what is scoring low or high? And it's about training the managers to handle those discussions. But I think the engaging the individual and using their own curiosity to follow their own journey is something I'm hoping to be key, and that I hope to work with more.
Absolutely. We have one last question here on the screen. Do you ask the same questions every survey, or do they vary over the year?
Yeah, so I mean, we use the intelligent survey setup that Elitives provide, that has a core set of 48 questions, all connected to drivers for engagement. And that is the core of the survey as it's used. Those are varied. I mean, maybe you should explain this, Diana, but each and every person will be presented with these core set of 48 questions during a 12-week period. But it doesn't mean that all staff get the same questions at the same time, because due to the machine learning in the system will follow up on individuals and their issues, or teams and their issues. And then I suppose the cycle starts again in the next quarter. The questions are launched towards the target group. Is that a good way to explain it?
I think you explained it in a very good way, Tove. But maybe just to clarify, so just like Tove mentioned, we have our standard package with questions that are all based on scientific research, and that contains the 46 questions. And when you utilize the pulse frequencies, we have an intelligent pulse. So that means that AI will control which questions to send out to every employee. And those questions are tailored to your situation as an employee. Because what we see is that if the questions that I receive are not relevant for my situation, then I will eventually stop answering the surveys because I don't feel like the questions are relevant. So this intelligent pulse chooses the questions from this question battery to ensure that you always get relevant questions for you as an individual. And like Tove mentioned, over a 12-week period of time, we aggregate all the data that the managers see in Eletive, which will give you this complete overview of all the questions that is in the questionnaire. I see that we are out of time. We've had a lot of great questions in the Q&A still. I want to thank you all for joining today's session. Tove will also be joining the speaker panel later on. So if you still have questions, don't miss out on the speaker panel. But with that, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We hope that you got some inspiration to bring with you in how you work with engagement in your organizations.
Thank you.